Well, pretty good, isn't it? Huh?
Wow, amazing.
Well, Mr. Hughes, it is so good to have you captured, here in my dungeon.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I'm a fan from way back in the 1970s on that TV station out of Washington that you used to be
Oh,
on.
yeah, Channel Funny.
Channel Funny, right.
Now, I've already given our audience a little clue as to what you do for a living. Now, I called you a rumor monger.
Yes.
Is there a better term? How do you describe yourself?
I like to torture media people. We print evil, rotten rumors about them, and it's all truthful. We don't tell any lies, but we bring out the truth and we skewer them alive on the website. So if you run a TV station or you're on the radio in the Washington area, we will take you and shine the evil light of truth on you.
I got to remember that. That's
Yes.
pretty good. Well, tonight we're showing a movie entitled The Devil's Hand. And, I figured that since the movie's inviting the devil, and some people think that you're the devil incarnate, we'd do this anyway. Do you know anything about this film?
Other than what you said about the Mr. Alden's father's in it.
Oh, yes, Hawkeye.
It's got the guy that played Commissioner Gore.
Whoa, very scary. Very scary stuff there.
Oh, bunch of voodoo.
Wow, scary stuff there. That was me on Count Gore Duvall's creature feature. As you all may know, Count Gore Duvall, aka Dick Dizell, a wonderful TV personality. He used to be on Channel 20 back in the 70s. And Dick did he was Captain 20 in the morning, and then he was, they did the kiddie show, little kids and all that, and then he would come out on the weekends. I believe it was Saturday night or something, and he did, back in the 70s, all the local TV stations, or all the UHFers and stuff, the indie stations would all have a horror creature feature movie, sci-fi movie thing, and they always had a host. Channel 45 had the Bowman Body. No, Channel 45 had the Ghost Host, and Channel 56 had the Bowman Body, and Channel 20, of course, had Count Gore Duvall, and Count would come out and, he'd do a shticky old movie, Earth versus the Flying Saucers, or some old Dracula movie or something. And, they would come in between, during the commercial breaks and do funny little shticks, and sometimes they'd have guests on. And this was back in the days when you had local television, when local TV stations actually did local shows more. Today, the only local television you get on local television is news, the newscasts. That's all your local television is. Local TV, for the most part, doesn't produce local TV shows anymore. They don't make them. Back in the 70s and into the 80s, local TV had they actually did local shows. Some actually had studios. And so we got Count Gore Duvall on Channel 20. And so anyhow, over the years, I think Channel 20 said adios to Count Gore. And then Dick Dizell, picked up and he moved to Chicago. I believe that's where he's from originally. And did quite well there. He did an events planning business, and his wife had a job and all that. And then I think his wife got transferred back to Washington or something brought him back to the Washington area, and he moved back here to Northern Virginia. And this was sometime 10 years ago or 8 years ago or something. And he decided to resurrect the Count Gore Duvall character. And so he got a website up and started doing his shows and was internet showing them and all that. And this was 2007. He invited me over to his dungeon, and we taped this little thing, and literally in the basement of his house. And he has a whole dungeon set up down there, and he has a coffin down there, and it's quite interesting. And I finally got to meet him. I met Dick at a couple of broadcasting functions over the years, but I'd never actually seen him in person in his Count Gore Duvall getup. It's quite a cool moment for me, having watched him all those years on the television. So anyhow, this is the 15th of Feb edition of Dave TV. I don't know. I'm totally disoriented. I'm totally disoriented. There we are. No, just had a couple English muffins. I think I'm okay. Don't have any crumbs. You see any crumbs in my beard? I was going to bring this up yesterday and didn't have time for it. The DC radio dial, circa 1960, mid-60s, 65-ish. Kind of interesting to look at what the stations were playing back then. The formats. AM station, AM stations, WAVA, 780 AM was all news. And, oh, interesting. I'm looking for the FM side of that. I don't see it listed here. I guess they just have, okay, yeah, they were also 105.1 with the same format, so they just simulcasted. WDON 1540, Country Western, WEAM, WEAM, The Great Rocker 1390, Rock and Roll, kind of top 40 format. Wheel 1310 out of Fairfax was listed as popular. WFAX Standard, Semi-Classical 1220, GMS at 570 and 103.5 Classical, and that station lasted well up into the 2000s. HMC, WHMC 1150 out of Rockville or Gaithersburg, popular rock and roll. That was kind of a progressive little station way back in the day. Winks at 1600 rock and roll. WMAL Variety. WOL 1450 rhythm and blues along with WOOK 1340. PGC 1580 rock and roll. PIK 730 popular. WQMR 1050 semi-classical. WRC 980 variety. WTOP 1500 Variety, WUST Rhythm and Blues 1120, and WWDC 1260 Popular. Then we go to the FM side, Educational WAMU 88.5, WASH Popular Standards at 97.1, WAVA we did, WFAN 100.3 Latin American music. I remember that station lasted well into the 70s playing Spanish stuff. WGAY 99.5 Popular Standards are easy listening. That was the good old classical format there. I mean, not classical, the good old Muzaki format. GTB. Remember Georgetown University's WGTB? That was a really cool radio station. Lasted, I don't know when, Georgetown University sold the station. They had a lot of problems with the student-run format. Eventually sold the station and it became WUDC, I believe. University District of Columbia bought the station somewhere in the 80s, and it turned to a jazz format, and then UDC sold the station, and now it's C-SPAN WCSP, which is, I like C-SPAN. I think it does a good mission, but man, that station is boring, you know. I don't know. C-SPAN radio, put it on the internet, sell the station, and we get some kind of a cool college format back on that station, man. Because 90.1, it never, ever, ever shows up in the ratings. But anyhow, back in the day, it was WGTB, educational, but it really had a kind of a cool progressive rock format. WGTS 91.9, Columbia Union College. WHFS, of course, was on 102.3. Now, here it says Variety. So I guess back in the mid-60s, it was kind of a middle-of-the-road station, which eventually evolved to the cool progressive rocker that it eventually became in the early 70s. WJMD, 94.7. Yeah. That station's had a number of calls over the years. Remember the WLTT calls, W Light. It was that for a number of years. And then it became... WARW, the Arrow, and the Globe, and it's had a bunch of different formats, but it was WJMD for quite a while. WLMD actually says that in 900 AM had a jazz format. Really? That was a talk station back in the 70s. I remember that. WMAL 107.3, so WMAL FM, and back then it was a classical station. Jeez. That station became a kind of a cool alt-rocker. Well, I wouldn't call it alt-rocker. Called the Soft Explosion. It was kind of a progressive-ish rocker, light rock, whatever. Laid-back rock, I guess, would be a better format for it. Back in the early 70s. A really cool station back then. And then it evolved into a rock station, and then got the RQX call letters, and then in the late 70s became Hot Hits Q107. Yeah, and WNAV 99.1, which was an easy listening station out of Annapolis, which eventually became the Annapolis-based WHFS. WOL 98.7, Rhythm and Blues, which eventually became WMOD, which was an oldie station for many years until it flipped to MZQ at about, 76, 77, and it's been country ever since. PGC at 95.5 with the rock and roll format. It was rock and roll for many years. Top 40, big top 40 station in the 70s. And then that became classy 99.5. Remember that one, that WCLY, back to PGC calls, and then became a big urban contemporary format, which it still kind of has. WRC 93.9. That station's been with them, that was used to be owned by NBC, the old WRC FM. And that eventually became WKYS. Eventually went through a bunch of different owners, and that was the Radio 1 urban giant that it is. WTOP FM, the original WTOP FM, 96.3. And that station was sold by the Washington Post, sold it or gave it away, I think donated it to Howard University, and became WHUR in the early 1970s. And that station, it's interesting. It's a college-owned station, but it has a commercial license. So it's literally programmed like a commercial station. And then WWDC 101.1, which is popular instrumental back here in the mid-'60s. And that became kind of like middle-of-the-road music. And then DC 101 was born. I'm not sure the year, early 70s, 73, something like that. And, of course, WXRA 105.9, country music. And that, of course, is now 105.9 The Edge. That's had a variety of different formats. That was the old WCXR. That became a classic rocker in the early 80s, WCXR. Cool station at the time. I don't know. So that's some of the that's our quick look at the DC radio dial from the 60s into the 70s. Today's Dave's record collection. We're continuing through the C's. My man, Elvis Costello, and my aim is true. This is one of the few vinyl Elvis Costello dingies I still got. And, of course, I got a bunch of him on CD, including, this is a brilliant album, Armed Forces. And this is another brilliant album, too. Get Happy. This has got something like 30 cuts on it, and every song on this is about a minute and a half long. It's a really wild, kinetic, frantic album. Blah 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 blah. All right, folks, that's Dave TV for today. No current events today. We'll skip that. We'll get into some Washington Post bashing next time. And I just wanted to say, have a good one and enjoy the relatively warm weather here in the Washington area. It went up to almost 70 degrees yesterday. Cool, cool, cool. I'll take that for mid-February anytime. And don't forget to stay